explain that they'll be muted. And
I don't have to do anything, right?
You don't, Erva. And
Okay.
I'll do all the announcements for Pendle Hill at the beginning, and then I'll introduce you, and then you can take it away.
Okay, cool.
All right. I'm going to admit everyone from the waiting room. I'll do all the announcements.
Am I going to see them?
If you want to. Or you can change yours to speaker view, and then you can only see yourself.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to admit them now.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, good.
Welcome, friends. Welcome, everyone who is joining. We will start the lecture tonight a little bit after 7:30, just to give folks time to arrive. We're so glad you're here with us. If you want to get yourself some water, get settled in, please take time to do that. We will get started with the lecture a little bit after 7:30. So thank you so much for being here. You'll notice that you're muted. You'll notice that you may only be able to chat with the host. Those are things we've chosen to do for our lecture series just because it helps when we have so many folks on the call to just manage some of those details on our end. So thank you for understanding about that. And we'll get started in about 5 minutes or so. So thank you so much for being here promptly, and we'll get started in about 5 minutes. Thank you, friends who are here. We will be getting started in about 5 minutes. Seeing some familiar faces. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in about 5 minutes. So if you want to get some water, get yourself settled in, encourage you to take some time to arrive. There will be a question and answer at the end. The way we manage question and answers for these calls with so many people is you can submit questions in the chat to myself and to Francisco. We're the Pendle Hill team tonight. My name's Lena. I'm the education coordinator here. Francisco, who many of you know, is our executive director. So at the end of the lecture tonight, there'll be a question and answer time. You can submit questions to us. We'll field them and we'll read them out loud for Erva. We do that because often people have similar questions. It allows us to see which questions people really are excited about and choose those questions. It also helps us just to really respect everyone's time and not ask repeat questions, things like that. So we will have a question and answer toward the end here. Yeah. Glad to have everyone here. And we'll get started here in just a couple of minutes after 7:30. So I encourage folks, if you want to get some water, if you want to settle in, we will take a little bit of time here just to let any folks arrive just after the start time. Again, my name's Lena. I'm the education coordinator here at Pendle Hill. We'll be getting started after 7:30 here. Welcome, friends. We're going to get started here in a couple of minutes. Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started in about 3 minutes here, just to give folks a little bit more time to arrive. Thank you for your patience. Welcome, friends. We'll get started in about 2 minutes here. Thank you for being so prompt. If you want to settle in, get yourself some water or anything you need to be really present, I just encourage you to do that. And we'll get started in about 2 minutes.
They're supposed to mute us automatically. I can't turn my mic on. Barbara. No. No.
I do ask that folks who are not Erva, Francisco, and myself, keep yourself muted for the lecture, just so we don't get any feedback. We are live streaming on YouTube tonight. That recording will be available after this lecture. So if you want to share it and if you want to view it later, that'll be available for you at our YouTube channel, Pendle Hill USA. Yeah, thank you for keeping yourself muted, just so we don't get too much feedback here.
See, I've not been able to get the top of my screen. You're supposed to have a lot of stuff on it.
All right, we're going to get started here in just a moment. Excellent. Welcome, friends, to our December 1st Monday lecture with Erva Baden. My name is Lena Blunt. I'm the education coordinator here at Pendle Hill, and I will be doing the sort of commercials and intro this evening before passing it to the fabulous Erva, who will be sharing her work with us tonight. As I said to a number of you who were here a little bit earlier, we do have a couple of practices in our first Monday lectures that I just want to orient you to. We ask that everyone keep muted through the lecture, and you may notice that the chat is closed so that you can only chat to Francisco or myself. That's a decision we've made based on a couple of different experiences in past lectures. I know that folks love to connect with each other, but we're just not going to have folks connecting with each other in the chat during the lecture today. We find that just helps folks stay really focused on what Erva has to say. So thank you for understanding. There will be a question and answer at the end of the lecture tonight. When we get to that period, you can submit questions into the chat, and Francisco or myself will be reading them out loud. Francisco will be watching comments and questions coming in on our YouTube channel. As I mentioned, we are live streaming tonight, and the video will be available for your viewing and sharing after this evening. So encourage folks to share these resources as you like and are able. One brief announcement. Our first Monday lecture series is a series that happens every month, the first Monday of the month. So we're really glad to have Erva joining with us tonight. Our next first Monday lecture will be January 4th with a maybe special conversation with a certain Pendle Hill staff person who's on this call tonight and is not me. But all of that to say, we really invite folks to come to our first Monday series. They're free and open to the public. We live stream them on YouTube as well as here on Zoom. And we also encourage folks to consider joining us each morning at 8:30 a.m. for Meeting for Worship. We've continued to have virtual worship at Pendle Hill each morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and have folks joining us to worship from all around the globe. It's quite a special time. And we will also be having a celebration for New Year's this year. For folks who know Pendle Hill, we have a long-standing tradition of marking the new year with 3 programs, a New Year's performance, and candlelit meeting for worship. In this time of coronavirus, those things look different than they have in previous years, but we're still ringing in the new year in that tradition. So we have 3 New Year's programs, one with Carl Middleman on the work of Beethoven, one with Valerie Brown on what love calls us to do, and a art program that will run through January with our very own Jessie White, who will focus on portrait painting. There's also a performance that will be free and open to the public December 30th. And you can find all the information about our New Year's programs on our website, pendlehill.org. So I encourage folks to check those out and celebrate with us this year. But tonight, we are here to join together and explore healing ancestral trauma. What is epigenetics and why does it matter? It's my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Erva Baden, tonight. She's a contemporary shaman who weaves together healing modalities with compassion and humor to journey with clients committed to their own deep transformation and healing. She's a Reiki master and has more than 25 years of experience in facilitating the deep emotional process and release work nationally and internationally in men's, women's, and mixed gender circles. She's studied energy work, chakra healing, and core shamanic techniques, as well as trauma recovery and the intergenerational effects of trauma, which is, of course, what we will be exploring more tonight. Erva, thank you for being here with us, and I pass it to you.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Goodness. Great to see you, and thank you for coming. I was going to say coming out, but you didn't. You stayed home. We all did. Thank you for your interest. I'm going to jump right in. You will see me looking up and down at my notes because I have to have notes. I'm 71. I don't remember a lot sometimes. But anyhow, we're talking about 3 topics this evening. Healing ancestral trauma. What is epigenetics? And why does it matter? So let's jump in with my definition of ancestral trauma. And a couple of caveats, actually, as we're going through this. I want you all to remember to breathe. There may be some stuff that kind of triggers you, or you might have some sort of emotional reaction to stuff. Remember to breathe. Okay. Ancestral trauma, my definition. Trauma that occurred in our ancestors' past experiences has left a residue, which I call the DTR, or dreaded trauma residue, that's passed on to future generations. The effects can be physical, medical. They can also be mental or cognitive and emotional. All of these things often bring up, or what's brought up is the reactive DTR, the dreaded trauma response. So what's that look like? What's a dreaded trauma response look like? We'll just start there. Anyone ever know anyone that kind of just blows their top at the smallest thing? I know I can't hear you, I can't see you, but I assume somewhere, sometime, you've actually encountered that probably you've not done that yourself. I'm sure you haven't done that yourself. But let me just say that for me, that's one of the things that's called the dreaded trauma response. It is a reaction that is over the top, apparently for not a commensurate reason. It just seems like it's, oh my God, what happened? What's she doing? Okay. All right. So let's hold on to that definition, the dreaded trauma response and the dreaded trauma residue. The residue exists in us. I think of it as a reservoir. It's not, depends on how full it is, and sometimes it just gets stirred up. Okay. All of the examples of a trauma response and all of the dreaded trauma residue or the epigenetic effects live in what I call the BSM, body, spirit, mind, BMS, whatever. But we are not just physical. We all know that. We are emotional people. We are intellectual folks. We are spiritual folks. And all of those aspects of ourself get carried around by our physical body. So it's something to keep in mind as we're going through it. And that's one of the reasons that I said, be sure to breathe so you oxygenate and get some more energy flowing through your bodies. Epigenetic transmission. Okay, so that's from a past generation on to the next and to the next and then to the next. Does not necessarily show itself in every generation. So let's talk about a medical aspect in which some people may have a medical condition, diabetes or heart issues. That may be one of the manifestations of an old trauma way back in the past that shows up in that person. Not everyone will have the same thing. It'll skip generations. It's good for you to actually, there's the DNA tests that they do sometimes now show the medical proclivity for certain diseases. Could be a good idea to have that done. I don't own anything in the company. Okay. So what is epigenetics? Epigenetics is simply the study of this phenomenon. The first study that I became aware of, done quite some years ago, and I think may still be going on, is what's called the Dutch Famine study. It's related to the Jewish Holocaust. The essence of it is that women who were pregnant and or who had children during the famine that existed during World War II were studied afterwards to see what sort of reactions, issues, problems came up in their children and then in the grandchildren. So it followed this group through different generations to see what things were coming up. I don't have a lot of definite detail, but it's the first big study that was done. And it's fascinating, interesting stuff. The next definition is trauma. Okay, this is sort of my favorite. Trauma. Trauma is any occurrence that is perceived by the primal or reptilian brain, the old brain from way back when that holds a lot of stuff. The reptilian brain perceives this as an impending life-threatening danger. The key word there is perceives. It doesn't have to be an actual life-threatening event, but the reptilian brain is always on the lookout for safety issues, for anything that is threatening. I have to say that I like to call that part of the brain Godzilla. So that's just me. Okay, Godzilla is a big reptile. Godzilla has the ability to crush, to annihilate, to do all manner of things. And basically, that's the function of that part of the brain. Godzilla is always on the alert, always. Doesn't necessarily take action, but is always on the alert for anything that seems threatening. Okay. When something occurs that the reptilian brain considers to be life-threatening, there are immediate responses that surface. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now for fawn, I prefer the term submit or acquiesce. But in fight, Godzilla is going to take over and is going to defeat this particular impending threat. Flight, Godzilla says, let's go, we're out of here. Freeze is, if I keep still, and you see these responses in many animals. If I keep still, nothing's going to happen. I can just stay here and perhaps it will, and the it being the impending threat, will ignore me. Okay. Take a breath. That's for you and me. So after Godzilla has taken control, or the reptilian brain has taken control, the immediate situation is resolved, and then the cognitive brain, the thinking aspect of ourselves, goes to work and says, that was something. I think I don't want to have to deal with that ever again in my life. Let me think about what I can do, what measures I can take, put in place to make sure that I prevent that from happening ever again. That's the stuff we need to take a look at, because that goes on through the generations also, and again comes up. It can skip a generation, but comes up as a behavior. It seems to look like a behavior, when in fact it is part of, or pretty much all of, a trauma response. So I want to give you an example of a trauma response from my experience. So I grew up in Baltimore in the 50s. Baltimore was integrating some places, and some places were not integrated. And what I know of the event is that my mom had taken me out of public school and enrolled me in the newly integrated Catholic school. I was the first colored girl. We were colored people then. I was the first colored girl in the school. I didn't think too much of that. I mean, I was missing my friends in the public school, but it's like, okay, here's more kids, here's kids. And so sometime at lunchtime, one of the days that I had just gotten there, not too long, a group of older white girls came over on the playground to me. They seemed really big to me. They might have been like 10 or 11. They seemed really huge. And they surrounded me and said, we want to see if colored children wear panties. And with that, I looked. What I know now is that my reptilian brain offered some suggestions. Fight? No. They're too big, too many of them. Flight? Can't get away. I'm surrounded and can't push my way through them. Freeze? Probably so. Submit? And in retrospect, I think that there is a part of me that did submit. I don't remember what happened as the resolution, how they left, but I know that I was not physically hurt. But my cognitive brain said, we are not having that again. We are absolutely not having that happen again. And the best way to prevent that is to make sure that white girls like you. And that's what I did. I became the class clown. I befriended lots of the girls in my class. I became part of one group, one clique of girls that made fun of some of the other girls in the class. And so I was accepted, and I was not threatened again. That's like third grade. I lived a lot of my life like that, by making sure that white people liked me and accepted me so that they wouldn't threaten me, although there were still threats that came. But my go-to tool was to make sure that I was pleasant, congenial, and that they liked me. I lived a good amount of my adult life like that also. And I recognized that pretty much when I got to college. And there were Black folks and white folks, and I was kind of off center there. I didn't know exactly what to do. There were people that were my color and people who identified as, at that time, we got to be, I think we were African American then, or maybe Black. No, we were Black. That's in the 60s, and I think it was Black Power at that time. But what I know is that that cost me, that decision actually cost me in self, in my selfness, and that I had to continue to make it a point to make white folks like me. And I did some things that I'm not particularly proud of. I sucked up. I joined in sort of making fun of other Black folks. If that's what it took to keep me safe in the white society that I was mostly in there and in work, later on in my work life, that's what I did. So I struggled with that for a long, long time. I think it ended yesterday, not sure. But, you know, I'll make light of stuff, but the truth is that that is an ongoing process for me to stay true to who I am without having to make someone like me. The inner child still lives, and she's still afraid, and she's still going to make sure she does whatever she can to stay safe. That's a trauma response. Take a breath. I need to take a breath. So when we talk about, and I don't think I want to go there, take a moment to think in your own life of a particular trauma that you may have experienced. And after Godzilla was done with Godzilla's solutions, what's the actual solution that you came up with and held on to? How has that influenced your life? You can even take some time to think back perhaps to your ancestors, if you know of any traumas that they experienced, and just wonder about how has that influenced your life? So why does all this matter? Because we're all walking around with it. We are all subject to some sort of embedded trauma response. I call it the dreaded trauma response, because we all carry through the epigenetic mechanism what I call the dreaded trauma residue. Some of it's our own, some of it actually is from our ancestors. This works not only, like the dreaded trauma response works not only in us as individuals, but it works in genders. Men and women may have experienced traumas, or their ancestors may have experienced traumas that are particularly related to the gender. We can take a look, say, in, I don't know, the Middle Centuries, Middle Ages, where women were certainly oppressed in various cultures. We can take a look at so many things. We can take a look at, in America, the slave trade, where certain people were stolen, captured from Africa, and brought to the United States for the express purpose of being, shall we say, workers. They were slaves. And there was a lot of oppression there. The question then that comes up in epigenetics and trauma response is, what did any oppressed people have to do? How did they have to modify themselves to fit in and stay safe? There are some that fought. And throughout history, there have always been some that have fought oppression. There are some that have acquiesced and submitted. That's what kept them safe. There are also some that, of course, have just frozen. And so how have those traits been moved through the generations? It bothers me, because I think if we had more information about this, and if it was more generally known, we could do the work of healing these past ancestral traumas and live in our true selves, in our authentic selves, having removed some of the residue, if you will, that makes us react in particular ways. It's a good question. So there are individuals and groups that have suffered from traumatic experiences. There are gender, age, and race-specific traumas that have occurred to people. Age is another example. How have older people been treated in various cultures? Some with great respect, and some not. And so think about where you are on the age spectrum. What are some beliefs that you have about being old? Where did they come from? There are some practices that, I think of the Eskimos. Now, I know it's their culture. I don't understand, but it seems to me, what I know of it is that when folks get to be a certain age and they're close to death, they're put out on the ice floe and they die. I don't know all the information about that. I don't know whether it's a spiritual practice or whether it's a social practice, and I don't know where it came from. But it's something for me, at least, to think about. I do think about that. There are also professional groups that may be reacting out of particular trauma responses. We think of, here's a good one that's going around these days. It's like, all cops are bad. All cops are not bad. All cops are not bad. It seems to me that they will have the same trauma response as anyone else if they are continually confronted with danger. They may not necessarily have healthy ways to respond to that danger. And if the trauma response in them is so huge, I mean, then I think we could see some of the stuff that we're seeing now. Some, abuse of power, if you will, abuse of physical stuff with the police. But we also see that in other groups. I think what I'm trying to get to is that, for me at least, this is a topic that really needs more exploration so that we can start to live in harmony, at least with ourselves, within ourselves, harmony interiorly, and with each other. There's let's see. Nina, can I have the Resma slide? This is a slide that I found actually on Facebook from an author who I would say you really need to read, from Resma Menakem. His book is called My Grandmother's Hands. First couple of chapters are absolutely riveting. And he talks about trauma experiences in different races and how enormous that is and what an enormous influence it has had and continues to have. This particular quote I like: trauma in a person, if it is decontextualized over time, looks like their personality. Can absolutely look like a person's personality. Trauma in a family, decontextualized over time, looks like a family trait. Oh, yeah, we got alcoholism running through the family. Oh, we have all kinds. We got mental illness running through the family. All of that stuff. Okay, let's see what the context was by which this particular issue evolved, not only in the family, in the individual. And trauma in a people, decontextualized over time. I said that. People, over time, looks like a culture. It seems to me that the best way, or one of the best ways, to control a group of people is to oppress them, is to play to their trauma responses, and then to make those responses wrong. So I invite you to take a few minutes to think about, again, your family. Think about your environment, folks that you know, folks that you maybe work with, folks that you have known. And take a breath. Lena, can I have the next one? Mathematics. Okay. Really interesting. Ancestral mathematics. In order to be born, you needed 2 parents. And take a look all the way down. Just you. You needed 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. Keep going. So take a look at the total number of ancestors that you potentially could have had or do have over the past 400 years. Pretty amazing. 4,094 ancestors over the last 400 years. Think for a moment, how many struggles, how many battles, difficulties, sadness, how many traumas, Interesting. For me, the brighter note is that in all of the struggles and trauma responses that have worked or haven't worked, our ancestors all have still been resilient. We need to take a look at their resilience and how they managed to keep going in spite of their own trauma responses, whether they were positive or negative responses. There's something that kept them going. And I want to honor that and honor our ancestors for what they did to make sure that we are here now. There's another slide I'd like to put up, which is a actual current event that's about to happen, which I find absolutely riveting, fascinating, disgusting. There is a woman in prison, Lisa Montgomery, who is on death row and set to be executed. First woman in 20 years that has been executed in the United States. Her crime was actually killing another woman and taking the woman's baby to raise as her own. The abuses that Ms. Montgomery endured as a child, including being sex trafficked by her mother, gang raped by adult men. She was actually locked in a small room and kept there, and her mother would only bring her out so that she could be used in the sex trade. All of the trauma that she experienced, and she's not that old. I think she's in her 20s still, maybe 30. All of these things exacerbated a genetic predisposition to mental illness inherited from both sides of her family, including complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a trauma response blown way up. It's a nuclear one. Her lawyers have said few human beings have lived through the kind of torture and trauma that was inflicted on Lisa Montgomery by her mentally ill, alcoholic mother. So for me, this talks about mental health care issues and how perhaps it might be a good idea to dig a little deeper into a familial past to see what are the markers that were transmitted through and not addressed, so that someone comes to a point of total dissociation, total psychosis, and I think no sense of self. Take a breath. How y'all doing? I know you can't talk to me actually, but Lena, give me a little, let's see, give me a little feedback here. I'm looking at your pictures, and I know that you're muted. But I want to see your faces. This is hard stuff. It's hard stuff even for me to talk about. And I think that there is actually hope, because there are ways to dig deep internally and explore and release the stuff that's stuck in us. It's what I call actually reclaiming my authentic self. And that's some deep work. But I think that that's the only way that we are going to get away, and in supportive communities also, not necessarily by ourselves, but it's how we're going to eliminate this and hopefully eliminate, what's the word I want? Bear with me, folks. The transmission, the continued transmission. In energy work, there's a theory that when we do the work for ourselves, we pass that healing back to the ancestors, and we prevent it from going on to future generations. I believe that. That is the work that I do. I call it soul restoration. There are a lot of good books on trauma response. One of my favorite quotes is, "Trauma fragments the soul." And without our soul, which we carry around in our body, that's fragmented, we are not whole. And we can't afford that, and we can't afford to pass that on to next generations. I know we're early. Lena, can we go to questions?
Absolutely. I've been getting some.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Just invite folks to submit questions into the chat.
Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can put a question into the comments. And just invite folks to put questions into the chat, and we'll read them aloud for Erva to respond to.
And continue to breathe, folks.
Mm-hmm. A question from Eileen.
Mm-hmm.
What do you suggest when you know there was trauma among your ancestors, but you don't know any details, and they're all deceased?
I would think to, first of all, look at their surroundings, look at the history. And by that I mean the actual history of what was going on and how they were related to whatever was going on. Certainly in times of war, there's all manner of stuff that comes up, all manner of trauma that's experienced. You know, the violence for sure, the fear, hunger, illness. So you might want to just study the period of time that they lived in and see what resonates for you. There's a book by, I think, Bessel van der Kolk called The Body Keeps the Score. Body does keep the score. And I think our soul keeps the score also. So I believe that it's possible to, with the help of whoever therapist or energy worker or someone that you trust, other friend, to let yourself allow to surface some of the stuff that doesn't seem necessarily logical. When I work with clients and they've got a pain somewhere and I say, paint me a picture of what's in there in your body, it doesn't have to make sense. That's the key. It does not have to make sense to our cognitive brain. But the reptilian brain knows that there was a threat. Use that tool and allow yourself to breathe. I think various forms of body-centered therapies are really good for that. Get that out of your system. It's energy. Move it out. If you find an image, allow yourself to release that image and do some cathartic work around that. Excellent.
I think that leads perfectly into this question from Jeffrey, which is, what therapeutic approaches do you find to be most helpful? I think you started to speak to this.
Oh. Well, you know, first of all, as an energy worker, I'm going to say all energy modalities. And it's not necessarily the one that I think is the best. It's the one that calls to you. You may find some resonance with a particular form. There's all kinds of stuff. There's Reiki, that's an energy form. There's breath work. You know, there's chakra work. Stuff does get stuck in our chakras. You might find that you don't have much of a voice because there's some blockage in that center, that energy center. There's all kinds of stuff to look for to help move this stuff energetically out of the body.
Thank you. A question from Renee. Is a person's trauma response that they tend to experience most passed down from generation to generation? For instance, mine is freeze/fawn. Could that have been something my ancestors experienced most?
Well, what I think about it is yes. But the question is, what do you think about it and what do you feel about it? What's the sense that you get about it? You know, your bodies hold all manner of stuff that can actually be accessed through even just journaling, just, you know, writing stuff out, and you go, oh my God, where'd that come from? Well, it came from inside. Somewhere inside, there's a message. Did that answer? Who was that, Renee? Did that answer?
I think Renee is still muted.
Okay.
Another question here. This one is from Carrie. When people have not processed their trauma, do you think that they re-traumatize themselves by going over and over the hurts done to them in the past?
I think that if we go over it and over it and over it again without doing the work of releasing it, that can be re-traumatizing. And that's just what I think. But if we've got to move it out, we've got to move it out of our bodies and spirits.
There's a couple.
Go ahead.
No, thank you. I can always stand to take an extra breath. There's a couple of different questions here coming from parents and adults concerned about young people in their lives. So I'm going to try and combine a couple of different questions I'm seeing about this. If you fear you have transmitted a trauma onto a child or a young person in our lives, how can we help them heal? And relatedly, a question is, when one doesn't have children, what effects do you think healing your own trauma has on younger people?
I think it has a great effect probably on the world. Whether we have, I have no children, whether we have children or not, the energy, for me at least, the energy exists still in the world. And also, I'm very married to this concept, is that when we do healing, somehow that energy, the healing energy, moves back to the ancestors before us and helps them to heal also. Now, that's on an energetic level, absolutely. Hopefully, when I'm doing ancestor work, I say, send this back to you, but please do not materialize in my bedroom and thank me. It's okay. It's all right. But I do believe that there, oh God, I'm going to say quantum physics. I am, but there is no time. All time is happening now, and I believe that. And I don't say you all have to believe that yourself. I'm a little wacky, but consider that if that's a possibility, why not do the right thing and send healing to yourself back and forward? And if you don't have children, the forward is out into the world.
Thank you for that. There is a question. There are more questions than we'll be able to get to. I want to acknowledge, really, really appreciate all of the participation here. It's clear many of you have thought a lot about this. Let me see. There's a question, can you talk in more specifics about how you work with clients?
Yes and no. How I work with clients is to, first of all, talk. Let's talk. And let's see what's going on. What's bothering you? What brings you here? And then I like to understand what sorts of sensations, feelings, thoughts exist that's been troubling, but that they don't understand. And then I start to first to go into the body and see, well, like I said, is your throat kind of constricted? You have pain in your lower back constantly? I will say one example I'll give is that I had a client once who had chronic ankle pain, just chronic ankle pain, unknown origin, didn't know what it was. So we did a little exploring back into the past, and it ended up that this client had an ancestor who actually had been shackled by her ankle to a bed to prevent her from escaping. She was a chronic runaway slave. And so we did some healing work there, some talking with, it sounds weird, I know, but talking with the ancestor, because sometimes the ancestors will let us know that, listen, I put this there to protect you, all right? This is here to protect you. You would get to running away like I used to do. You can't do that. It's dangerous. We have to sort of dialogue with the ancestors or the energy or whatever you want to call it to help them understand that I have some resources myself now, and I'm happy to hear what you have to say, but can we release, will you release me from this particular trauma?
Thank you.
Oh.
This is a question from Whitney. They say, you mentioned that not all cops are bad, and realistically, each individual may not be bad. However, there are a lot of people complicit in a violent system. So it seems that what we really have is a traumatized system in America.
Yes.
I realize that there isn't, sorry.
Go ahead.
It goes on to say, I realize there isn't a simple solution, but what do you see as a possible route to begin healing this traumatized system from the individual level outwards and upwards?
First of all, I would suggest Resmaa Menakem's book, My Grandmother's Hands. He does a lot more of that sort of healing work between groups than I do. I work mostly with individuals. But his stuff is absolutely amazing. To get at the root of the problem, get at the past and intergenerational traumas that each group has experienced, and let's clear that up individually, and then let's come together. Now, that's my take on what he does. He may say something else, but that's that's the feeling that I get from what I read in his book.
There's a question about using that book, which it feels related. Barb asks, if we as a meeting take on the study of Resmaa Menakem's My Grandmother's Hands, what protections need to be established within the group for situations David Treleaven describes when conversation or related meditations and contemplations might exacerbate symptoms of trauma stress for people with PTSD or previous trauma experiences?
That's when you need a professional. You need a professional therapist in that particular realm, with all of that knowledge in addition to some of the more out there things. And by out there, I mean like just straight pure energy work.
Thank you. A question from Tim. How do you see epigenetics informing the treatment of racism as a public health issue?
Holy moly. Well, for me as a Black woman, this is where I go. First of all, I think there needs to be acknowledgement of systemic racism in the country and the way that it has been systemic, institutionalized. There needs to be some truth telling. When the Constitution was written, you know, we the people, it wasn't all the people. Liberty and justice for all, it was not. Actually not liberty and justice for all. Black folks were not included in that. And I think we need to, you know, so much of history leaves out an awful lot, particularly around African Americans, Native Americans, and the things that occurred to build this country. I didn't learn a lot of that stuff in school when I was coming up. I had no idea. I didn't actually learn about the slave trade, I think, until I was an adult. So I think, first of all, ferreting out the truth of what happened is the first step. Then, dealing with one's own feelings about this new knowledge, and going, oh my God, I didn't know that. And avoiding well, it wasn't me, I didn't do that. No, you didn't, but perhaps your ancestors were complicit in it, or perhaps your ancestors were oppressed by it. And to recognize that there are stories that are untold. I hope that helps.
Thank you. I think that leads in a little bit to this question from Kat. What kind of questions can you ask yourself to help figure out and dissect a more deeply rooted personal trauma?
Why does this always come up for me? I think that's the question I would ask. Wonder why this always comes up for me. Why do I always act this way? And then sit and listen and feel. You may be surprised, and journal. I'm a big proponent of journaling. For others, I don't do it much myself, but I have. I think we need to listen internally and to let images or thoughts come up and don't necessarily brush them away and say, oh my God, that's ridiculous. Because if it's something that came up, there's got to be some root cause.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ruth asks, Resma talks about blowing trauma through others. Could you say in your own words what you understand him to be talking about?
Say that one again. What Resma says.
Resma talks about blowing trauma through others. Could you say in your own words what you understand him to be talking about?
Nope, because I don't remember that. Yeah, I'm not saying he didn't say it, but I'm not, for some reason it's not resonating with me. I'm not getting that. Blowing trauma through others. Blowing?
That was the language of the question, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
All good. There's some folks in the chat saying they think he means that this is projecting one's own issues onto others.
Okay.
This is the downside to not having the chat open, is we don't get to see the back and forth. I will acknowledge that.
I hear you.
Yeah. There's a question here. If you could say a little bit more about the Fawn response.
About Fawn?
The Fawn response.
Okay. I do like to call it acquiesce or submit, because for me that makes a bit more sense just in my mind. But that's a response that says, for me at least, it says, oh, that's okay. No, it's okay. I mean, you probably didn't really mean to hit me. It's a submissive sort of response. It is a submissive response. And the hope is that if I submit to this threat will end. Often that's not the case. I hope that's clear, questioner.
Thank you for all of these, friends. There's lots and lots of questions here we're not going to be able to get to, and I do appreciate the participation here. There's a question from Nathan. Can you talk about different faith traditions' view on ancestors? 5, 7 more generations is a frame that many use. Speaking from his experience, he thinks that many of us can feel completed in a responsibility of 5 or more generations. It'd be helpful to hear your take on faith traditions and the generational work.
Actually, that's the first time I've actually considered that, and I'm sorry, but I can't come up with anything right now. I'd be happy to research that. I mean, so what I think I hear, Nathan, what I think I hear you saying is that 5 generations back is as far as some faith traditions go. Just give Lena a little yes or no, if that's accurate.
I will acknowledge, friends, we don't have this experience in all of our First Mondays. Erva, you are, I know in your heart of hearts, a really experiential facilitator, and I so appreciate that. And I just want to acknowledge to everyone on the call that clearly our decisions about how we use the chat and things like that are making it less clear and less participatory and experiential. And so I just want to acknowledge, and we've gotten some good feedback tonight to maybe consider doing things a little bit differently in the future. But Nathan, I think, is nodding. I can't find his video, I confess. There's 132 of you on here, and it's hard to find all your faces.
Oh my God.
Thank you. All right. Sorry, just got a flurry of responses in the chat saying, leave it closed, leave it open, leave it closed. So lots of good opinions about the chat. It's part of why we do curate it, is there's so many good comments. Here's another question for you, Erva.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to synthesize a couple different ones here. What responsibility do you see for us as a society in the case of the execution you gave the example of, and many other executions, when trauma feels to be at the root of this type of violence, and then is met again with violence and more trauma, what do you see as the responsibility to disrupt that cycle?
I think that's huge, first of all. And I think the responsibility lies in the medical and mental health fields. Both of those things. What comes to mind that I find interesting is that I believe in Philadelphia, or there's some police departments that are now enlisting mental health workers to go with them on particular calls. I think that's just skimming the very top. But it's a beginning. I believe that it's a beginning. People who aren't trained in mental health assessment don't know. They don't know. And so if they're trained in a particular way to ameliorate violence that's happening, they may not understand that the person who's exhibiting violent behavior is in the throes of some absolutely enormous trauma response and how to react with that. And I think that's one of the things that Resmaa talks about also. So here's a person who's used to dealing with, confronting with violence, who doesn't have much of a basic, if you will, understanding of what a trauma response looks like and how it can look very violent, how it can appear to be threatening, but how to move with that as opposed to more violence. I hope that was clear.
It was very, very clear to me. Here's another question for you, Erva, from Peter. You recommend Resmaa's book. Are there others that have helped you considerably, or that you also recommend?
Oh, sure. Let's see. From long, long ago, a book by David Grove, Grove, which was called, I believe at that time, Metaphor Work, which is pretty much what I'm talking about now, about going into the body and saying, okay, so what is it you feel in your body and where is it located, okay? And paint me a picture of that. What's its purpose? So like just bypassing a lot of the, medically sort of more cognitive stuff and going to the, I can't, wait, hold on. Too many words, only one mouth. Going to the word cosmic part of the body, mind, spirit. Going to the spiritual part. So the David Grove Metaphor Work. Then there's, I believe it's Peter Levine, Waking the Tiger. You see, you're all going to make me go to my books. Certainly Bessel van der Kolk, I think, and his book is The Body Keeps the Score. That's more recent. Another book that I recommend it's called The Comprehensive Resource Model. Psychiatrists, mental health workers, and energy workers consortium out of Pittsburgh, I believe. But the therapist, I think, who mostly authored is Lisa Schwartz. Fascinating book. I would love to go and take some training there because it sounds like exactly what I'm talking about all of the resources that we can bring, energy work, breath work, as well as talk therapies, all of that stuff together to help people heal from this stuff.
Folks are sharing different recommendations for different books in the chat as well, but there's one in particular I'd like to lift up from Sarah that says that she's been thinking a lot about Alexis Pauline Gumb's book of poetry, Dub, Finding Ceremony, and like where she says to claim all of your ancestors, Mm-hmm. Do you have more recommendations for other books of poetry or creative books, especially any focused on ancestral healing or supportive for ancestral healing?
and so now I go to the African American community because Malodoma Somé has a lot of stuff. You know, get on, I hate to even say the word Amazon, but get on somebody and look up ancestral healing. There's a lot of stuff about that. Don't make me go over there. Oh my God, no. There's a lot about ancestral healing. There's also a lot about shamanic work, because this is the realm that we're talking about. It is the non-visual, non-physical world that exists all around us. And traditional shamanic work has always been able to move in that realm and negotiate, if you will, for us who are pretty much stuck in the physical world.
There's some requests to share the list of books that have been shared. I will try and compile part of what you've mentioned, Erva, from this video and part of the books in the that are being mentioned in the chat. And we'll see what I can do to share that with folks.
I'll send a list.
Can have a comment. Perfect.
I will send a list because I'd be taught some books out of the bookcase now, you know, for the rest of the time. So I will definitely share a list with y'all.
Wonderful. I know, Erva, we're approaching the end of your time and you wanted to do a closing exercise with folks. Do you want to transition to that now? Do you want to take another question, or what are you feeling?
Let me have one more question.
Okay. Oh, pressure's on to find a good one. There are so many good ones.
They're all good. They're all good.
Yeah, and I am sorry we will not be able to ask all of them.
So listen, Lena, go ahead and look for the question. But listen, folks, I want to tell you, this is all my fault. This is all my fault. It's true. I am much more a conversational kind of presenter and experiential kind of presenter. I'm happy to talk about the, you know, the nitty-gritty stuff and all of that, but I am really much more interpersonal kind of stuff. So don't blame Pendle Hill. They're doing the best they can with me.
There's no fault at all, Erva. I just want to say I love your conversational nature, and I think it's really powerful. So let's remove fault from this equation in any any way.
Okay. I'm just excited that that there is a venue for this. That there's a place where I can share stuff with folks. I like that.
Here's a question. How would you work with ancestral trauma that has caused a family to implode? Can you work with just one person?
I can work with just one person, and the question that I would ask is, what is that person's goal? What are they wanting to accomplish? And understanding that there may be limitations if the whole family is in chaos or separated, but even if one person starts the healing process, understand that you may not see complete healing in the family dynamic. Oh, constellation work. Y'all look that up, constellation work, which is about family constellation work. Amazing stuff. And that addresses the larger picture of the family. Why didn't I think of that? Okay. Lena, shall I close them up now?
I do. There's a question. Is that constellation?
Yes, like
or...
the like the constellations, planets. It is constellation work. It's how the family constellates itself. Who's closer in? Who's further out? What are the issues that have prevented this one from coming in closer? Or it's pretty amazing. I've actually experienced it myself.
Thank you for clarifying that, Erva.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just...
Couple more.
Yeah, I see a hand up from Lynn for a question. We do generally ask folks to type them so we can read them aloud. But Lynn, where did you go? Sorry, sorry, I'm getting a little lost in the participant list.
It's okay.
I just lost her.
Lynn.
Oh. Lynn, you lowered your hand. Do you have a question? Okay, I think we'll go to the exercise. We have 8 minutes left. So, Erva, if you could take us away.
All right. So, wherever you are right now, take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath. I can pretty much assume that this has stirred up some stuff in a few folks, and that's fine. And let's settle. Plant your feet on the floor if you're sitting. If it's comfortable for you to close your eyes, that's fine. If not, don't worry about that. But let your shoulders relax. Let your jaw drop. Try not to snore. And deep breath in through your nose. Breathing, 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 and out through your mouth. Blow it out. This is a grounding exercise so that hopefully you will not leave off kilter, that you will be steady in your body, mind, and spirit. And so take another deep breath in and out. One more deep breath in. Feel more relaxation coming into your body, breathing out the tension. And if it feels comfortable to you, imagine that where you are sitting or lying or standing, that your legs start to grow roots, like tree roots, down into the earth, easily and gently. And if anything feels uncomfortable to you, then you can stop. But if this feels good in some way, let your roots go down into the earth, just like tree roots, down further, down further into the earth. Let your roots expand. And just like the roots of trees, let your roots pull up nourishment, sustenance, connection to the earth, without judgment. If it sounds weird or feels weird, if it's comfortable, bring it up. Let your roots draw up the earth's energy, bringing it up through your thighs, into your belly. Feel that nourishment from the earth moving up into your body. The earth holds us to her. We call it gravity, but the earth holds us. And so bring that energy up to the middle of your chest, where your heart is. For those of you that are familiar with the chakras, where your heart chakra is, right in the center, and bring up more of the earth's nourishment and grounding. And if it's comfortable, feel that energy moving out across your chest, into your arms that have become branches. Feel those branches moving up towards the sky. Only if it's comfortable. And let your branches reach up even further into the night sky, seeing the last quarter moon that's out there tonight, moving up to the stars. Let your branches reach up into the spirit realm, into the cosmos, into the mystical realm. And draw that energy down to your heart chakra, heart center. And let those two energies, earth and spirit, rest in your heart. Move out into the rest of your body. Calming, nourishing, restoring whatever is needed. And just sit with that for a few moments, breathing in, breathing out, sending the energy wherever it needs to go in your body, in your mind, and your spirit. And if it's comfortable to you, find a place where you can store a concentrated aspect of the energy that you just brought in. Or if it's a word that you can think of, something to anchor this energy that grounds and inspires. Deep breath in. Open your eyes halfway on the out breath. Another deep breath in. Be aware of your body wherever it's sitting or standing right now. The next deep breath. Open your eyes. Look around at your surroundings. Feel yourself. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as a friend of mine says, go in peace, go in God, go in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erva. Thank you, everyone.